Latest mind-numbing TikTok pride song, louder with Crowder. Leftist suddenly outraged over Juneteenth Federal Holiday. Wait, what?
It's going to be a federal holiday for reasons teachers won't be allowed to explain.
Okay, we're going to talk about Juneteenth. I got to go pee, so I'm going to run this right now while we fucking do this, okay?
To their students out of fear of critical race theory backlash. Actually, celebrating Juneteenth is precisely counter to critical race theory. And the people pushing it have nothing but malignant intentions for what comes next year. Meanwhile, controversy breaking out, oddly enough, mainly from the left over Juneteenth. So yesterday, Congress adopted pretty much unanimously, there are a few people who voted against it, to make Juneteenth a national federal holiday. Now, Juneteenth is the date in which slaves in Texas were finally informed about the Emancipation Proclamation. And it happened like 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. And so it's been celebrated in black communities around the United States as sort of the date marking the end of slavery for decades, truly decades. And so now it's been made a federal holiday. And as I said yesterday on the program, not only do I not have a problem with this, I think that it's quite good that we have a federal holiday marking the end of slavery, because that was a signal moment in America's history. It seems to me that we should absolutely celebrate the end of slavery, whether that should be on Juneteenth or whether that should be upon the ratification of the 13th and 14th Amendments to the United States Constitution, the revivification of the promises of the Declaration of Independence under the auspices of the Lincoln administration, and the end of slavery, and the establishment of equality before law, at least in the Constitution, and then gradually effectuated over time, so that now there is full equality before law in the United States. And if you don't believe that, you should read some of the laws of the United States sometime. That is well worth celebrating. That is a very good thing. Now, what the left was saying is that they want Juneteenth to be made a federal law so that we can basically club Americans by saying that if they don't now agree with our racial agenda, then it's because they don't understand the legacy of Juneteenth.
Wait, what? Okay, dude. That's, wait. What the fuck? They want to club Americans about the radical racial agenda of Juneteenth, which is what, like a celebration of the abolition of slavery and black liberation, even though it came after the official abolition of slavery. Like, what is the, what? Dude, he's trying so hard, dude. Just, Ben, I don't know why you're doing this. Just be like Charlie Kirk. Like, no one cares. Your audience is too stupid and too fucking racist to literally think about this and be like, well, this is, wow, Ben is making like a really good point. And if he hadn't made a really good point, then, you know, I would have actually been skeptical of his decision. Like, no, dude, look at Charlie Kirk. Here, I'm going to show you guys, like, this is what you should be doing, okay? Charlie Kirk tweets about Juneteenth last year. This is your daily reminder that we wouldn't be celebrating Juneteenth had Republicans not freed the slaves. Yikes. Today is Juneteenth, celebrating the end of slavery in the United States. This was made possible thanks to Republican President Abraham Lincoln. Today, Democrats are fighting to tear down his statue. Senate Republicans are introducing legislation to make Juneteenth a federal holiday. Barack Obama and Joe Biden were in the White House for 8 years. Why didn't they ever do it? And then now Joe Biden is back in the White House. Lincoln knew America's founding was July 4th, 1776. He knew that was the day our amazing nation made step from ideal to reality. Juneteenth is an affront to the unity of July 4th. We now have 2 summer holidays, and one of them is based on race. Shame on the GOP for supporting this. Like, he doesn't need it. First of all, so what's up? Like, should we fucking yeet Memorial Day weekend, dude? That's a summer holiday, is it not? Is Memorial Day weekend not technically a summer holiday? It's like literally marking the beginning of summer. I can't believe he hates, I cannot believe. Isn't July 4th literally a celebration of race? What? A clear opposition to the 2 holiday solution. Why do Republicans not understand the B. Johnson party flip? They do understand it. They don't care. They want to say that it's not the truth. And while simultaneously defending like people wearing Confederate flags as they go and vote for Republicans. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to make sense. Okay. It doesn't have to make sense. It has never made sense. My point exactly is that you don't have to make sense or be logically consistent in order to get racist dipshits to get fucking riled up. You calling him racist proved his point. You are proving his point by calling him racist? Wait, what? His point is what? I'm so confused. His point is what? That people getting mad at Juneteenth is so fucking idiotic and it's literal racial agitation. And the reason why it's racial agitation is because Juneteenth, the national recognition of Juneteenth as a federal holiday is pure symbolism. Okay? Let me give you like the actual leftist point of view for a second. The American government is not offering material equality to black people. There is no restitution. Okay? There are no reparations. We're not having a conversation about any of that. We're not even having a conversation about police reform anymore, let alone like the defunding of the police forces. Okay? That never happened in this country, and it will not happen. Every single fucking state and every single local budget increased their police funding. The only thing we got out of that was Derek Chauvin is going to jail. That's it. And that's not justice. That's just a beginning of like a justice movement. That's like the beginning phases of like one instance of justice being served. Okay. There is no like funding programs for black and brown communities, black and brown neighborhoods. Black people are still being oppressed by systemic racism. Okay. And all you get, also all across the country, Republican legislatures are passing numerous proposals that literally make it harder for black people to vote, brown people to vote, and poor people to vote in general. Okay? Voter suppression bills all around the country. And the only way for us to be able to potentially put some sort of federal check in place to stop that from happening, like we once had, which was abolished in the Supreme Court, unfortunately, or which was, yeeted in the Supreme Court, and voter laws have gotten worse and worse since then, is not going to pass in the Senate. So there is nothing that actually materially improves the conditions of black people. Okay? Nothing. And the only thing that the government's doing is like, here, take a fucking holiday. Just shut up here. And good. It's good. It's another day that, people can get 5% off at Bed Bath & Beyond. Great. Okay. It's another holiday for us to get like, some discounts and shit like that. And hopefully, if you're lucky, it's another holiday where you get paid holiday pay or potentially time off, which is great. So, but outside of that, it's like, it's nothing, right? It's literally nothing. This is like, it's nothing. And Republicans are still getting mad at that. So at some point, you have to recognize that, like, this is literally just agitation because people are acknowledging that slavery happened. Okay? That's it. It's just the way to whip up the base in a frenzy because them blacks are getting another holiday, brother. It's like, no, dude, you're getting a holiday too. Why don't you shut the fuck up? And as I tweeted earlier, it's like, imagine hating black people so much that you're like, nah, I don't want another day. Like, why? Just shut up. Just shut up and take it, dude. Just shut the fuck up and take the federal holiday. What's wrong with you? I mean, the reality is, if you wanted to improve, like slightly improve conditions for black people, just slightly, and all people in general, but definitely for black people disproportionately, here's a federal holiday you should have. Okay? Election Day. Not saying that this will solve magically all black people's problems. Not saying that black people are going to be able to magically improve their conditions by like voting for Democrats easier in an easier capacity. No, but it will literally at least slightly and marginally improve the opportunity to get the process of restitution started by making it easier for everybody to vote. and vote for people that they believe would be able to do that for them. That would even be a better way to, improve most people's conditions here in this country, rather than Juneteenth. Having said that, great. National recognition for Juneteenth is wonderful. It's not a bad thing. A paid day off is wonderful for everybody. Okay? Now, the irony here, of course, is that given the anti-CRT measures, the anti-critical race theory measures that is happening in all of these like fucking Republican states and shit, which is to say, by the way, that, critical race theory is anything and everything that talks about systemic racism, according to Republicans. People can't even fucking teach why Juneteenth is significant. It's literally like, yeah, you get a fucking holiday. Shut the fuck up. Why do we have this day off? I don't know. I don't know, brother. Let's not talk about that. That's so dumb. It's so dumb and it's so stupid. It's so laughable. I work for the Department of Transportation in Alabama. You should have heard the outrage for us getting a paid day off today. Goddamn shame. What? Motherfuckers in Alabama are mad for getting a paid day off? I mean, this blows my mind, dude. It fucking blows my fucking mind, dude. I am going to school to be a history teacher. I don't think history is possible to teach without CRT. Republicans hate critical race theory because they're incapable of thinking critically. So many ultra chuds are business/capital owners, so they probably actually don't want a paid day off. Yeah, that makes sense. But like, if you're like, I mean, usually when you're a white supremacist, you're either really rich or really poor. So if you're really poor, at least like, enjoy the fucking day off, dumbass. You know what I mean? Chill the fuck out. Anyway, let's get back to this.
The legacy of Juneteenth is racial progress, right? It is literally marking racial progress in the United States. And there's been a lot more racial progress, as it turns out, between 1865 and 2021. Okay, so it seems that should be a date that, frankly, everybody should celebrate, right? I mean, that is a very, very good thing that slavery ended in the United States. This is undisputed. Okay, but the left is using this as an excuse, as they always do. Everything is an excuse to push for more. Always. So you have a person named Astid Herndon, okay, at Astid Wesley on Twitter. He's a national political reporter based in New York for the New York Times. He's a reporter, not an opinion guy. And he is very upset that Juneteenth became a national holiday yesterday. Again, voted nearly unanimously in the Senate, with like total support from everyone. He says that what's truly amazing is that many of the same people who are voting to make Juneteenth a national holiday also oppose critical race theory. And critical race theory is not Juneteenth. Critical race theory is the belief that all of America's institutions are irrevocably intertwined with racism, that they are shot
Okay, true.
through with racism, that they are so poisoned at the root that all of the branches are just fruit of the poisonous tree. That is the basic idea of critical race theory, that whiteness is present in everything, that racism is a normal state of the world, that people don't even acknowledge their own racism, and that people benefit from that racism. Okay, and that...
I wonder if anyone's like, at least like, I wonder if there's any like, black or brown people watching Ben Shapiro that at this point they're like, you know what, he's kind of right. What the fuck? I really don't know. Maybe there are some people that like Ben unironically changes the minds of by just like saying it like this. Because the best way to like vilify critical race theory is not to like actually mention that systemic racism is real or whatever, but instead say stuff like critical race theory vilifies white people inappropriately and says all white people are evil, and it also sedates black people into thinking, into submission, into a servile state. Like that's what the racial agitation should look like. If you were to do it successfully, you would say that, like, instead of saying like critical race theory is describing that like all American institutions have, you know, all American institutions have, you know, the legacy of slavery baked into it because it was a fundamental part of American civilization and you know, societal development. And of course, like, you know, it's not very easy to move away from that by just with symbolic actions without any sort of like material restitution. Like, instead of saying stuff like that, you should just be like, it's bad because it vilifies young white babies into thinking that they're racist when they're not racist, and it tells blacks that they're servile and bad, and it, you know, promotes victimhood among black people so they can't uplift themselves by the bootstraps. You know, that's like that's what I would say if I was a conservative grifter. Like, that's the actual intelligent way to do racial agitative propaganda. So I don't know why he's fucking doing that. Why he's doing this instead.
Kids are supposed to be taught this. Now, here's the reality. So what did this guy tweet out? What did this reporter, this national political reporter, S.D. Herndon, tweet out for the New York Times? Quote, "It's kind of amazing. Juneteenth is going to be a federal holiday for reasons teachers won't be allowed to explain to their students out of fear of critical race theory backlash." What? I'm pretty sure Americans know about slavery. Turns out that we were all, literally all of us, taught about slavery in school from the time we were children. We are all very much aware of slavery, and that's why Juneteenth is a national holiday, to end slavery. But notice how the left conflates all the issues, right? All the issues are the same, always and forever. All of them. And if you apparently, quote unquote, give the left an inch, and I don't think this is giving the left an inch. I don't think it's giving them anything, frankly, to celebrate the end of slavery. Again, I think that's a pretty unifying thing. But if you give them what they perceive to be an inch, they then proceed to try and take it for a mile. And that mile is indoctrinating your children in the idea that America's institutions are irrevocably racist, which, by the way, is the precise reverse of what Juneteenth is. Juneteenth is a recognition that America's institutions changed and morphed and molded and adapted in order to be less racist. Right? The reality is the Constitution.
I mean, the real history behind Juneteenth is that despite the fact that slavery was abolished and a fucking war was fought over it because southern states really wanted to, you know, preserve their rights to own slaves, Texas still was like, nah, dog, I know we lost, but we're just going to keep this shit on lock. No one needs to know about this. And literally kept doing slavery for another 2 fucking years. So that's what the real history behind Juneteenth is. But of course, Ben's not going to take the time to educate his audience on what that is. So that actually is like literally yet another instance of like racist people refusing to offer liberation even after they have fucking fought a war over it and lost. Okay, so if anything, like, this holiday is supposed to be a celebration of that final closure, except slavery still exists in this country. Okay, slavery is still legal in this country. Slavery, not in the form of wage slavery, but slavery inside of prison. Slavery in the form of prison labor is still very much legal. And that is an American institution. Our criminal justice system is one of the many American institutions and American societal constructs that systematically targets black people, that keeps them subjugated, and then coerces them into working for $1 a fucking day. Like, what is that? That's literally, it's in our Constitution, man. Like, I don't understand. Like, how are you not going to acknowledge that? Juneteenth is a sad reminder of a southern state defying the law and targeting people of color. He mentioned it 2 years while you were gone. Oh, he did?
For amendment were utilized in order to end slavery in the United States. The reality is that it was America's legal process that was changed by the law under the systems and institutions of the United States in order to effectuate the end of legalized racism.
It's kind of like saying, by the way, what happened after that, Ben? Like, what happened for another 100 years? Like, Did we not have Jim Crow laws in the South? And also Jim Crow laws that were not as codified, but still very much segregationist policies in the North? Like, how are we going to talk about, like, American institutions are not racist, except, like, motherfuckers literally wanted to maintain that racial hegemony for as long as they could. So there was another 100 years of people being like, okay, slavery doesn't exist, but, you know, we should still have a separate but equal process. How are we not going to talk about that? And even then, when you talk about it, you're like, okay, 1960, in the 1960s, like, that ended. All right. But back then, the Ben Shapiros of the world literally kept saying slavery has been abolished. Why are people fucking crying about this? Separate but equal, separate but equal. We don't even have any racist laws. Look to the laws. Point to me where a law is technically racist. I mean, segregation is separate but equal. That is a way to whitewash segregation, okay? That is a way to whitewash Jim Crow laws. And Jim Crow laws didn't explicitly say, if you're black, you can't vote, okay? Jim Crow laws still also would say things like the grandparent clause. If your grandfather was not able to vote, then you are not able to vote. And a Ben Shapiro Andy at that time and point and place would absolutely and did absolutely say things like, well, where is the racism? It doesn't say black people can't vote. It just says we have to have literacy tests. It doesn't say black people can't vote. We have to, you know, we have a grandfather clause. We don't want people who haven't been in this country for a long enough time to be able to vote. Or if they weren't full citizens, to be able to vote. They just don't know any better. They shouldn't be able to vote. So it's not new. What Ben is doing is not new. It's a very, very old school way. Conservatives have been doing this for a very long time. Okay? How is that legal? Like, what's their reasoning for saying that your grandpa couldn't vote? You also can't? Well, it was to make sure that black people can't vote. If your grandfather was able to vote, then I think you got, like, you didn't have to get a literacy test, right? So, oh yeah, I'm going to look at this video in a little bit. This is, like, going viral right now because yet another black person has been like, systemic racism doesn't exist.
Racism in the United States. So actually, celebrating Juneteenth is precisely counter to critical race theory, which suggests, I mean, Derek Bell openly suggested this, that racism in the United States has gotten worse, not better. Juneteenth is a precise rebuke and rebuttal of that idea. But the media have decided that basically you have to accept, if you are racially sensitive, you have to accept that America is a more racist place, a more terrible place, and you have to allow the indoctrination of your children in this particular idea. That is, of course, absolute stupidity. There's a reason why there is a backlash, and that backlash is going to be extremely strong. I am perfectly willing, and so is every other American I know, to hear about the flaws of the United States. What I'm not willing to hear is that the United States is at root a racist, horrifying country and our institutions are bad. That is not true. It's a patent and absurd lie.
Yeah, totally. Because again, another 100 years post-abolitionist slavery, we didn't have racism codified in all of our institutions. And it still exists to this day. Because post-civil rights movement, you still have the war on poverty and the war on drugs. Okay, you still have redlining. You still have no fucking economic restitution, no reparations for black people. Like, here's a wonderful example of how fucking racist our institutions actually are and were even back when we abolished slavery. Okay? 40 acres and a mule was what black people were supposed to get in the form of reparations for all of the labor that they provided to this country, right? They never did. You know who did actually get reparations, though? Slave owners. White slave owners got reparations for all of the black slaves that they had freed. They got their fucking reparations, but black people never did. And not only that, but then they fucking again, codified institutional racism. Like they openly stated that there was going to be a separate but equal society where in a functional apartheid state, black and white people could coexist, but not necessarily coexist, because black people were not going to have the same liberties and the same rights and access to the same services that white people could. And then when that didn't work out, when there was pushback against that, we still chose to push black people into neighborhoods that were impoverished. We never offered them a leg up regardless. Gave them Band-Aid solutions. Okay? And forced them into conditions where the never-ending cycle of socioeconomic conditions and violence permeated. And then cried about, like, maybe some very fortunate black people being able to escape intergenerational poverty. Like, people don't realize that the overwhelming majority of black people living on U.S. soil right now, the overwhelming majority, now that doesn't mean, like, you know, immigrants and whatnot, but the overwhelming majority of black people living on U.S. soil right now are 1.5 generations removed from complete extreme poverty brought about by systemic racism, like codified systemic racism. 1.5 generations, dude. That's crazy. How are we going to sit here and act like that isn't important? Act like that isn't a real thing? That's a major setback. And white people don't even want to fucking hear it being mentioned. They want to look the other way. And not all white people, obviously. I mean, like, fucking conservatives. But goddamn, dude. It's crazy. Oh. Explain logically without buzzwords why the white majority would give up their wealth for reparations. I mean, without buzzwords, explain why the white majority should give up their wealth, not just for reparations, but for all manner of economic restitution. They should, because we would be living in a more evolved society. Okay? A better society for everybody. That's crazy, dude. That's a crazy take. Like, you're mentioning taxes in the most, like, violent way that you can do that. And also, I already described to you that, like, there were reparations just to white people. No, they shouldn't. What the fuck? You don't hold people accountable for their ancestors? No, that's not about accountability for their ancestors, you motherfuckers. That's about righting a wrong of the past and caring for your fellow man. Unless you literally, unironically think there's a difference between white people and black people. Unless you actually believe that we still should be living in a segregated society, you should care about people that are in bad conditions as a consequence of ongoing oppression and work to fix that. God damn, dude. I once took a politics course and I liked it, so I couldn't graduate fast. The teacher started to coon for Ben Shapiro. I insta drop. Do white people in extreme poverty get reparations as well? Serious question. I think white people in extreme poverty should have economic programs just like black people in extreme poverty do. But reparations is something beyond that. Reparations is righting a wrong to target black people who are descendants of slaves, okay? If you're here, you already know what my point is on class struggle. You already know what my point is about workers not getting a fair shake, about how all workers, regardless of background, color, creed, ethnicity, religious point of view deserve the same base level of material equality as everyone else, that offers them an alternate opportunity to survive, regardless of whether or not they subject themselves to horrifying conditions. Okay? And I'm not going to get into like the math equation of reparations, because that's overly complicated at a time when people don't even want to talk about the morality behind why, or why it would be good to have reparations. So like, there's no reason to get into the fucking math equation on that end, or the logistics, when most motherfuckers don't even want to talk about systemic racism's existence in modern American society. Did you clarify? Do you actually think all white people should give up their wealth for reparations? No, motherfucker, I never said that. What the fuck? Like, do you guys think that I'm like an advocate for donating to black cash apps because you have like offended I don't know, like BIPOC members of like a particular Minecrafters community or something? Like, I literally shit on that every day. Americans can't move beyond the hyper individualistic like point of view when it comes to every single issue, no matter how fucking leftist, no matter how woke you might be. It's so odd that individuals literally cannot remove themselves from seeing everything from a hyper individualistic lens. So the chatter who asked, how would wealth redistribution solve racism? It wouldn't solve racism, but it would serve as to address an economic inequality caused by systemic racism. Yeah. It's one first step. Everything that the government doesn't want to give rightfully due reparations because then white people will demand more social programs. That's the other part. Like, I love that when people say like it will create resentment. It will create racial resentment against black people. It's like, no. I think poor white people should be demanding on a class basis more from their government. I advocate for that every fucking day. And also, the irony is that like that implies that there isn't already a profound amount of racial resentment in this country already. There is. But I guess like racial resentment would be a little easier to manage for black people if they had access to the same fucking resources, social safety nets, programs like school programs and shit like that. You know? Anyway, my take on reparations is complicated, partially because I am privileged. And I do think that the better way, the better solution for reparations in this country would absolutely be like having community-led community leaders take funds and distribute them appropriately, like elected representatives distributing them appropriately into the community in areas of need, rather than like individually giving every black person who's a descendant of slavery money. And that is a controversial take that some black leaders agree with me on and others do not. So means testing? No, that's not means testing. No, that's like, instead of giving individuals money adjusted for inflation, I think a better resource for that would be to beef up black and brown neighborhoods and black and brown communities. Like, for example, one of the problems with black capitalism, for example, is that a dollar does not stay in the black community for too long. So when black people make money, they immediately move it out of the black community into white capital. And one way to solve that problem, rather than like, by the way, rather than fractioning out society on like the basis of the color of your skin, one way to solve that problem is for there to be more black-owned businesses if you're going to do that, right? And the reason why there aren't that many black-owned businesses is because there isn't a lot of economic help. There isn't a good foundation, unfortunately. Black people born in 1995 who is dirt poor becomes better off than white born in 1995 who was also dirt poor after your outcome. How is that not discrimination, literally? For the record, I'm not saying black capitalism is the way to defeat racism. I'm going to address that dumb take in a second. Hold on. Okay. One, I don't think that a white person born into horrible conditions shouldn't get social safety nets. I advocate for that as well. Okay? I advocate for that all the time. So I don't have a problem with like material help to white working class individuals. It's kind of at the heart of my argument. But that shouldn't be used as a cudgel against like African descendants of slaves who have been repressed, who have been subjugated, who have been forced into worse conditions for hundreds of fucking years. By the way, the entire like retort, you talk about racial problems like it's the most important problem to talk about right now. I mean, you can never win in this community because there are so many different points of view here. But if you ask black, indigenous, and people of color members of my community, they will literally say, I don't talk about race enough. So I can never fucking win. I do think that race is somewhat important, you know, kind of important in understanding how the American society functions, both through the lens of history, but also in contemporary American society. It's just race is still a significant issue. If it wasn't a significant issue, then Ben Shapiro wouldn't be making videos about it. Like, if racism was not a prevalent motivator for conservatives, then nobody would be like, I can't believe we're doing a Juneteenth holiday. Like, but it does exist. And it's not only something that exists, but it's something that's very successful at like galvanizing and emboldening some of the worst voters in our society. From years 1875 to 1991, we had 4 total African American senators. The 5th was Barack Obama in 2005. Yeah, we've had what is it, 11 black senators throughout the history of the United States of America. Like 11, dude. And people will be like, actually, black people are 13% of the 13% of public. Okay. Are they 13% of like all senators then throughout history? No. Hassan have helped me gain perspective and change my views a lot of times. In many cases, they already have same views on stuff, but I do not get this take at all. I believe there's some disconnect in the details between us, the viewers, and Hassan. The issue with far leftists is their solution for reparations and race-related issues don't rely on black people changing or having any autonomy over themselves. In the same way a homeless person might have been fucked, they still need to ascend. The black community needs to ascend as well. I don't know what you mean by that. Like, who's saying that, like... No, it's literally, like... It's literally about offering, literally about righting the wrongs of the past and offering an opportunity to black people to ascend, if that's what you're saying. Unless you're literally saying bootstrap your shit. Calling people racist for their takes is fucking stupid and pushes them further to reactionary takes. This chat is filled with Minecraft left Twitter streams. Give poor black people reparations and poor whites will start a fucking civil war. Omega Law just uplift poor people. Dude, you have been in here for 3 months, dude. You've been subscribed for 3 months. Please. Like, that's so fucking stupid, dude. It makes sense that I gotta, like, have... I have to talk about this conversation again. Like, turn around and talk about this conversation again and again and again. Specifically because there are people that haven't heard me speak on these matters, I guess. You can't push people back every step of the way and then be like, why can't you fucking bootstrap, dude? And then keep punching them in the face whenever they do. Just a question. Was suggested there should be reparations until race would stop being a factor dictating your place in society? Class discrimination plays a fundamental role in every capitalist society, right? But beyond that, there is a multiplying factor in the form of race. Okay? That's all white privilege is. It's the lack of it's the lack of having like one extra layer of marginalization removed. That's all it is. And it has been a significant fucking multiplier too. My biggest problem with Juneteenth as a holiday is a virtue signal that doesn't do anything to help average black American. Medicare for all, $15 minimum wage reparations, I sure would make all black Americans' lives better, not a holiday. Yeah. No, I know. I think most leftists understand that this is a pure virtue signaling a thing. That's why it's like, that's why there was a bipartisanship that could be met there. It's purely performative. So white poor people have it easier than black poor people? Yes. Yeah. That's true. It's not great for poor white people, but yes. Whenever someone asks that question, by the way, they always think like probably like a you know, homeless white person versus like a kind of poor black person. Like, no. I don't think anyone, unless they're like fucking gigantic rad libs who are just crazy and delusional, think that like Oprah is in a worse condition than like a fucking homeless white person. That's not true, because class is overwhelming in that. Okay, like class is more dominant in that equation than anything else. But if we're talking about like a middle class black person and a middle class white person that have like nearly identical economic conditions, that middle class black person literally got to that point only in 1.5 generations. Like they literally had to escape the struggles of systemic racism in the form of segregation. So yes, while they are in similar economic conditions now, there's still plenty of racist shit that occurs that puts them in a worse position overall. You get it? Because you're not being discriminated against for being white. There is no difference between low class and low class, man. That's fucking not true, dude. That's I'm sorry. That's such a white ass take, dude. It really is. That comes from a place of profound privilege that just not recognize that. It really is a white ass take right there. Straight up. Anyway. Senate votes to make Juneteenth federal holiday so long as no one thinks too hard about its significance. That's a great take from The Onion, always. It's really, really, really difficult to comprehend, especially if you're a poor white person living in like fucking the West Virginia mountains, you know what I mean? You're like, what the fuck? Like, how? Like, my situation is so dog shit. Well,